So you probably got a pop up there asking about the recording. Welcome everybody. This is night two of our self-regulation discussion guide. And I know other people are going to come on board here as we kind of just kick off and get started. Just a couple of little bits of housekeeping stuff, I guess, before we get going. If anybody, obviously, if you feel like you need to scoot, don't worry. I know that if you're here on the island of Newfoundland, you're probably dealing with a storm. I'm getting all psyched up to use my snowblower for the very first time when this is over. I'm excited about that. So if anybody needs to run or scoot or do anything, please just, take care of whatever you need to take care of on your end. Fingers crossed we don't lose power. It's not that windy, but you never know. I live in a really windy part of the city, so anything could happen. Yeah. So welcome back. Here we are, Self-Reg, great book. Um, Getting ready to, I'm choosing between two books for the next book club. Um, Really, I'm choosing between three. One of them I haven't read before. Two of them I have read before. But they're two of my, I'll call them my academic crushes. And I'm trying to make a decision about when we're going to do it. I think we're going to do them in do the next one in March, maybe the end of February. So we're making a decision about the next book. But this is the last class of this book, and you can see mine is well loved, like we talked about last week. When I made a post this week about the book club, um, the executive director of the Merit Center shared the post, and I was so excited and so awestruck by Susan. And last time I had a meeting with her, it was all where I was all gushing and starstruck. So I was kind of happy about that, that she thought it was a good thing that we were doing the book club. So I just wanted to say that because I thought it was a really big deal. So again, tonight, if you feel like you want to get a professional development certificate, if you're here live, you have the opportunity to get a professional development certificate. So you can put that in the chat if you want. And I do have Zoom can take attendance too. So yeah, Carmen, I have you written here in my notes from last time for you for sure. So if anybody else feels like that they want to have one, then we can do that too. So let's just sort of set the stage, I guess. Um, oh, Rosemary's just coming on. Let's just set the stage, I guess, for the emotional safety part of tonight, just like we did last week. This material is kind of impossible, I think, in my opinion, to not time travel, to not think about the people we love, think about our own kids, think about kids we've worked with, families that we worked with. I don't think it's possible to not kind of personalize stuff like this. So if you have any sort of activation of feelings around that, take really good care of yourself. I know that that's the caution that I give everybody who reads this book. Like, it's really can be really transformative information, but just everybody's always doing the best that they can with the skills that they have at the time. That I know for certain. Sorry, the tickle starts right away. So take good care of yourself. If there's anything that you feel like you need after this session, if you want to reach out, please do. We're always here to help. Or if you feel like there's any more resources around this topic that you feel like you want to have. Tomorrow, when I, sorry, I'm gonna have a cough drop. Tomorrow, when I send out the recording, I'll hook up a link. Could there be more annoying noise over a microphone? Probably not. Sorry about that. I'll send out some links to the Merit Center. Merit Center webpage is really great. It's got a lot of really great resources for parents, for teachers, for early childhood educators, for education assistants. If you have maybe a professional who's working with your child and you'd really like to get them this information, there's a lot of free resources on their page, a lot of really good stuff. So, um, here's tonight. Um, we tried to do 1 through 6 and we didn't quite get there, but that's okay. Got lots of ABC plans here. Um, and as with all of it, feel free at any time to open up your mic if you want to ask a question, or um, please type it in the chat box too. You can do that. Um, because it's much easier to get through this material for any kind of material for any course or class if people are asking questions. It's easier to get through it all. So last week we got to like almost to the end of chapter. We got to the part about the domains of stress. Um, and what's tonight is going to be a lot of that, talking about the domains of stress, because each there's a chapter on each domain. And so we're going to stop and talk about each domain a little bit more. There is a really great, important part around co-regulation called the interbrain connection that Stuart Shanker stresses in this course and in this textbook and everything that he does. And I think if there's anything to walk away from uh, with a deeper understanding of how humans are connected and why every single strategy that we ever do with somebody who is dysregulated, if it doesn't have some level of connection in it, it's not going to work. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the interbrain stuff. And if anybody wants any more clarification on it afterwards, we've got lots of stuff. Um, Lots of brain biology in this chapter or in this part of this book. There's a lot about dopamine and hormone, cortisol, adrenaline, those kind of things in here too, which is also super, super useful for everybody to understand. And then it gets into the end of the chapters. There's one full chapter on um, adolescent brains, which I think is a beautiful topic to talk about. And reward systems talks a lot about super stimulants, why phones and iPads and screens and video games are so addictive to the adolescent brain. And then it ends with like, what do we do with all of this information? So it kind of ties itself up in a nice little bow, which I really liked. So before we kind of jump into the questions that are in this trusty study guide with all of my notes and post-its and stuff over it, is there any question that's sort of glaring for anybody right now around around anything that they read that they want a little bit more clarification on? As I said, I've read this book an embarrassing number of times, and I've taught the self-regulation certification program for years at the Merit Center, and then I done a whole lot of extra training for too many years, I guess. So I sort of feel like I'm immersed in this material. If I can't say that I'm a total 100% expert, but I do think that I could take a kick at many, many questions. So if there's anything that pops up for anybody that they feel like they want to ask a question around, please feel free to do that. So I'm just gonna, how do you get the guide? Okay, I'll send a link to that. I'm gonna write this down, Carmen. I'll send a link to the guide on when I send out the recording. It's on the web page. It's on the Merit Center web page. So I'm just going to write that down. Link to study guide. Yeah, it's a fantastic way to sort of um, engage in a deeper way with the material. A lot of the questions, like the way that it's set up, is like I'll just show you. This is the chapter on the biological domain. It gives a little summary of the chapter, and then it's got discussion questions on the bottom. And the discussion questions are a little bit like the questions that we ask students who are doing the certification. And when you're doing the certification, you got to like type your answers. It's a really reflective process. So why don't we start this way? Let's just talk about the five domains, I think, and then we can let me see here. Talk about the five domains and see if we can sort of see how they're all connected and move on from there. unless anybody has any other questions. Okay. So one of my most favorite things in the whole world are Venn diagrams. I just love them. I love how they are really nice images to be able to show how things are connected. So sometimes it's helpful to think about the diagrams or the domains of stress as five circles that are interconnected. And so we can talk about all of the different kinds of stressors that are in within each of those domains. So if we had, here's a domain here, and here's a domain here, and here, like there are all of the different ones which we're going to talk about tonight. And when you connect them together, you know how dependent they are on each other. And so when stress is really high, all of the domains in those domains rise together too. And when one domain starts to get lower, they all lower too. They're all so deeply interconnected. So this is about how do we become a really great stress detective in trying to figure out um, what is the stressor and what's happening. And in the Stuart Shanker world, if we are wondering why this behavior, why now? What's happening? Why why at home but not at school? Why in, I don't know, why with mom but not with dad? Why on Fridays but not on Mondays? We're wondering about those. We're really super curious. What the Shanker method tells us to do is always look at the biological domain first. That's where we should always try to be looking at first. Now, people with neurodivergent kids, we can think about a lot of things. We can think about food, picky eating for starters. If anybody's living with a picky eater, you know that there's, your food on your plate impacts your mental state. We know that for a fact. Sometimes there's issues with sleep. Sometimes there's issues with sensory stuff. All of that stuff falls under that domain. So if you're readjusting somebody's medication, if they are all of a sudden an adolescent and their brain's on fire and their brain is growing at a rate that it hasn't grown since they've been infants, that's what happens in the adolescent phase. That anything that taxes you biologically is in the biological domain. And so that's one domain to think about. And if we had our Venn diagram of our five circles, I would be highlighting that one bright red to ask a whole pile of questions around that. Are people eating, sleeping, moving their bodies? Are they attached to a super stimulant like salt, sugar, um, screen time? Screens are they're called super stimulators, not only because they dysregulate you, but they're also like addictive qualities as well. Some people, their kids just can't have the screens. It's dysregulating to them emotionally and in their nervous system, like deep down inside their skin. So that's the biological domain. So if that sounds like that's what sounds like something that is in my world, then those are the big things that we help people kind of look at. So the cognitive domain, we talked a little bit about this last week or 2 weeks ago before we had to close off. So the cognitive domain is about stressors that come with attention, learning, um, focus, all of those kinds of things that, like, if you got a little bit of ADHD and somebody's giving you a lot of instructions, it's really hard to keep all those things in place. You do this, then you do that, then you do that. I was watching Wheel of Fortune the other day with my mother and trying to figure out some of the rules for some of the last games. I'm like, I don't understand what's going on. He just said what to do, but I don't know what they are. Like if that was a direction for me in school, I would be really struggling with that to try to figure it out. So another part of cognition and the cognitive domain is pattern recognition. And for some of our kids, some of our neurodivergent kids, this is a huge stressor when we expect things to be a certain way and then all of a sudden they're not anymore. it can be such a trigger to understand why we might be getting this mysterious behavior or behavior we haven't seen before. So like I kind of look at it like if you started a new job and you went to school, went to work and you didn't know where your desk was and you didn't know where you were going to eat your lunch and you had to meet all these new people and like that's really stressful for grown-ups. And all of those things are really stressful for our kids too, like when we don't know things of what is going to be different than the pattern that we recognize. So that's a really big one. So the question here is if you can recall a situation where that was like that for you, when you didn't know. Maybe you were in a season of change, maybe there was a big season that was happening in your life. And when you didn't know what was happening. I remember when I turned 50, I gave myself singing lessons as a birthday present for myself, to myself. And my singing instructor said to me, "Hey, you should go sing in a choir. Like, we got this really great choir. It meets every, Thursday nights over at the pool or whatever in one of the meeting rooms. You should kind of go over." And I remember the stress of going in there with all these people who'd all sang in a choir before. They all knew each other. They've been singing together for years. And to go in there as a new person who had never met anybody before and trying to figure out what are the patterns here, right? Who are the people? Who are the friends outside of choir? What are they singing? Why are they saying that? Why are we standing here? All of those kinds of things. And I just got comfortable. And then we moved to a new place, like there was all of these things about unknown. So I kind of ask people to think about like, what would that feel like for us as grown-ups to be in a situation where what we used to know isn't there anymore, that pattern is gone. So we don't recognize the patterns and we have to make new patterns. I don't know if anybody has anything like that. It was in their life that they had to say, like, well, there's this season of my life is full of unknowns right now. That's a like is such a burner of your energy. So it makes us more tired because it's a lot of what ifs. What if, what if, what if? Um, Anybody who is dealing with kids with like really sticky thoughts, like OCD, like all those kinds of things, all those what ifs, what if, what if, what if, what if, what if I get sick? What if I can't do this? What if I'm embarrassed? What if all of that stuff? That's a real cognitive stressor that's then very connected to your biological domain because it's plowing through your energy. So that's the cognitive domain. Lots of other things in there too. So the next one that we wanted to talk about was the social domain. Um, and this is where I think, I don't know, is the phrase emotional safety new to people? Does anybody feel like that's something that's new? I'll sit here and give a second. It feels like if anybody wants to say yes or no to that, they can type in the
Well, I
well,
have a toddler, so I'm learning a lot about everything. He's 3.5 now, so yeah, like
yeah,
emotional regulation and emotional safety, like it's a big, big, big thing. And funny you said, I recently got diagnosed with OCD, so I'm trying to figure myself out and him out at the same time. It's a lot.
yeah, you got many eyeballs pretty highly focused right now, Amy, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot for sure. Yeah, so the thanks for sharing that. That's a heavy job in figuring those things out too. Meredith says here, emotional safety is so important, but so hard to ensure. I struggle with my preteen and helping to support her emotions. Yeah, I mean, here's here is hard. This is hard for us, because I think this generation of kids are going to get a little bit more, or maybe a lot more, because there's so much focus on social and emotional stuff in schools and preschools. Um, so they've got a little bit more language around emotions and a little bit more support around it. I don't think we do it 100% right in school settings, but how could we? It's all still new to all of us. Um, and I think a big part, if there is a, I'll tell you my biggest, and we'll circle back then to the emotional safety stuff. The biggest learning that I got out of this book and this program for me was that I shouldn't be expecting my little kids who are spent a lot of time around me, um, to be able to regulate their emotions if I couldn't regulate my own. And that was a big learning part for me, that I was going around with my nervous system completely dysregulated. And understandably, I was single parenting. My child had just got a diagnosis. I was going through a really heavy divorce and also menopause. It was hard, right? It was a lot of stuff. And so I was really, really, really dysregulated and expecting my kids to be able to manage their emotions too when I couldn't do them myself. It's a really hard job, right? To be able to do it, especially if we were never really taught how to do it. And that's because we came from a generation where nobody talked about it, right? Nobody did it. We just were all meant to be quiet or not be foolish or whatever, right? So there's this thing where we we get so triggered because we weren't allowed sometimes to be emotional, right? We just weren't allowed. Like, and that's not anything that's terrible about our parents or necessarily, it's just like that was the generation. It was just like, it was, and Newfoundlanders are, we come from generations and generations of very, very busy people who did not have time to do a whole lot of stuff around that. Like, you had to get the fish out of the water, right? And the potatoes out of the ground. Like, it was, we have generations of all that, right? So, we are, I describe it like this, is that we're kind of building the plane for ourselves as we're flying it and trying to figure it out. And so that's really hard. Like when when we're struggling to support our own kids' emotions is because, we might not have been able, if ever in our lives, to have a full emotion of a beginning and a middle and an end. That's what emotional regulation is. I get sad. I get really sad. I get triggered. I get sad. I get sad. I get really sad. I get super sad. And then I'm not as sad anymore. And then I come out the other end and I take a deep breath and then I move on. Most of us probably were able to be a little bit sad and then we got shut down. Or I got really mad and then we weren't able to kind of go, oh, that doesn't feel sad anymore. I can move on and do the next thing. It happened, but we didn't have the inner awareness to know this is going to end and I'm going to be okay, right? So when we're trying to support this with our kids, it's really hard because nobody ever taught us how to do it before. So we're doing it for the first time, usually real time with ourselves, with our kids in real time. So that's really hard to be able to cultivate spaces of emotional safety. Um, and that's kind of our job. Um, Now we know that this is the job of parents to be able to create spaces where our kids, it's safe for them to have emotions. Sorry, I'm chomping at the end of this cough drop. I'd say this book, I've got a couple of criticized words to say about the book. One of them is he says some emotions are negative and some emotions are positive. And we're trying to move away from that language now. I think if he wrote his next book, probably wouldn't say that. Because what we're trying to say is emotions are emotions. We all have them. They're all part of the human experience. We all have these emotions. Some of them are unpleasant. Some of them are hard to be around, but we have them for a reason, and it's our job to figure out why they're there. And we're also allowed to have them. The same thing with the ones that bring us joy and fill our cup and give us energy and help us really sort of connect with other people and make us think about things in the past or, bittersweet memories or the people who we love and those kinds of things. Those things tend to give us energy. Um, and are they positive? Yes, but it doesn't mean the other ones are negative. Like we live in such a black and white thinking world. So in real emotional safety, which is what this social domain is about how do I get comfortable with letting people, my kids and people, have emotions? How do I let go of all of my programmed crapola for whatever reason it arrived, where um where we just go, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to feel anger. It's okay to be enraged. It's okay to, how do we, what we call cultivate an emotionally rich space so that your kids feel like they can be who they are in the spaces where you are. That's really what emotional safety is. It's not only do I, everybody's like, what do I say? What do I say? What do I say? How do I do this? What's the strategy? How do I get this thing to stop? Like, what if you didn't have to get it to stop? You just had to sit with them while it was happening. That's an emotionally safe space, right? Um, Meredith, I'm just going to read this out. I can really relate to this, reflecting on my childhood compared to hers. So great to consider how we work through emotions and removing the negative stigma. Yeah, and just feeling an emotion. Yeah. I mean, that's that is such a radical thing for us because, if we can't stay focused, if we don't have attention, we get a diagnosis. If we're sad for a season, we'll get a diagnosis, right? We pathologize all of those challenging emotions. Like it's we're in the middle of what I call a course correction around that emotional stuff. So it's a really big one and it's a really hard one because when our kids are having those really hard days, those really stuck days when they, you can't get their shoes on you, you can't get them out the door, and you can't, all of that kind of stuff. Uh, or there's this explosion around the iPad or whatever. We don't know this, but we time travel back to when our needs were not met. We might not have any conscious awareness of it, but that's what we do. We travel, we time travel, and then we get elevated, and then we don't know what to do, and then we get stuck ourselves. And our kids are mirroring back this sort of disconnection that we might have had with people who were, weren't available to us in the way that we needed them. So it's like it's a bit of a mind melt, right? So how do we sort of keep our stuff level and not join the chaos, right? How do we, what is the phrase? How do we, there's two things. It's like you want to be an observer and not an absorber of what's happening because we can stay clear and figure out how to help and what to do and create safety. Maybe it's physical safety. Like how do we not like join in the chaos? That's one thing. And how do another student of mine at the Merit Center said, like, how do I stay curious and not furious, which I love. Like that's a real nice reframe, right? Like how do I like on Velcro from this explosion, this social stress or this emotional stress or what all that kind of stuff and observe it in a connected way, in a compassionate way, so that I can take a step forward to sort of help in the regulation. So yeah, that's emotional safety. And here's the hard part about that. When you become this place that's emotionally safe, you get to see it all. It doesn't mean that your house is suddenly rainbows and unicorns and it's kumbaya and everybody's walking around saying how much they love each other. It means you have cultivated the space where you are their person. And so they let it all hang out. And then we wonder what's wrong. Sometimes we have created this emotional safety, and then we got to really get comfortable with emotions because we've cultivated this space. So then you're going to see stuff. So yeah, it's a it's a big thing.
Lisa, can I say something?
Sure.
My brother is going through something with his 16-year-old daughter.
Mm-hmm.
He's a single dad, and she's decided that she just wants to live with her mom now. And he's taking it really hard.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things that she said to him, I guess in their final arguments, was that she didn't feel safe with him. And that really confounded him because he said,
Mm-hmm.
like, "I've not laid a hand on her. Like, I don't understand what she's talking about. I can't remember, maybe I touched her on her arm and brought her to me. I don't know what she's talking about."
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't really thought about it. I called him back later and I said, maybe it's just that she doesn't feel safe being her authentic self with you. Or, maybe she doesn't feel safe telling you some of the things that are going on in her life, and she feels safer with her mom. I said safety is, it can be more than just physical safety. But as a dad, he didn't catch on at all.
Yeah.
um, he really had a hard time with it at first. I've told him he probably needs to go and speak to somebody about this, because this is, he's reacting as if it's the most important thing that's happened to him, and yet, he's not really doing anything about it in the same way, right? Like, he needs to go and see somebody so that he can, I think, so that he can
Yeah. Yeah,
restore this
absolutely.
relationship. But
Yeah.
yeah, like, emotional safety is so important. My teens need to know that I'm going to be a safe place for them to mess up.
Yep.
And now, like, if my kid is going out and he messes up, he has to know that it's going to be okay if he calls me and says, "Mom, you got to pick me up," or, you
Yep.
know,
Mm.
and I think that's my position. That's, where I am for them in terms of, how they see me. I'm there I want to be there for them. Absolutely.
Yeah. And thanks, Carmen. It's a really beautiful, it's not beautiful that he's going through that, but it is an interesting thing because, um, sometimes the words that come out of somebody's mouth is accurate. That's really how I feel. I feel unsafe. That's true. But a lot of times, the words that come out of dysregulated people's mouths is really, the words don't matter as much as the fact that what we're hearing is a struggle. You know what I mean? Like, that's a struggle. I'm struggling with our relationship. When a really dysregulated 8-year-old say, "I hate you," or a 10-year-old's like, "I wish I was dead." Like, we get really activated by that, right? We get really like, "Oh my God, this is such a big deal." Or and it's designed to get our attention. So even though what she's saying is, "I don't feel emotionally safe with you," that feels like, I want to, she wants me gone because it's painful, right? She doesn't want to live with me anymore. She wants me gone. But it's designed to, on a conscious and a subconscious level, to get your attention so that you act, right? So that so you can see past your own stuff and go, how do I do, what do I have to do to fix this? I'm the grown up. I'm the parent. I'm the grown up. Some rupture has happened, and it's up to me to try to figure out how to fix it in a way that is safe. So she might be exactly emotionally mature and intelligent enough to say exactly how she is feeling, but it's also a opportunity to fix it. Because until they go, "I don't have anything to do with you ever again," because that's another trend, right? That's happening when kids are going no contact. Um, Unless, they are really saying that, that's a different thing. That still is a statement, though. That's still a really big communication, right? So it is this whole thing around, like, is that really her way of saying, of completely closing off the relationship, or saying through her words and her behavior that you have an opportunity to do this on my own terms so that I feel more connected to you. Mm. Um, yeah, it's a sad story. Um, but this, maybe I'm saying that when somebody says to a person of a certain age in their 40s or their 50s, "I don't feel safe," and they are meaning emotional safety, 99.9% of us don't know what that means. No idea what that means. We think, "Oh, I must have hurt her, or I touched her, or I hit her, or I spanked her, or I did whatever." but this younger generation of people have language that the older generation of people don't understand, right? It's really
Yeah, for
interesting.
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they're online talking about this and doing this in class and doing whatever, right? So yeah, it's really interesting. But how we create that safety with our teenagers is really complicated because we're launching them out into the world and their social networks are more important to them right now than we are. But our job is to still keep them safe. Their brain is not cooked. We got to launch them out into the world. They got to do all this stuff. We got to let them do it. We got to still be there. They're just like toddlers sometimes. And we got to, be there for when they need us. And I remember, those weekends with my oldest kid. I mean, she's living in Montreal and she's on the phone all the time, right? It's like we're trying to still be connected. It's just in a different way. But, having those conversations around safety with adolescents and still staying connected, but still allowing them to do their own thing. It's just like, boom. That's a class, right? In itself, for
Yeah.
sure. It's
There are
really.
sometimes, I think it's Amy, there's sometimes that I want my toddler back.
Yeah, I hear you.
Um,
Amy, what you had your hand up there. Did you have something to say? Then I'll read Holly's point.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I didn't see the chat.
That's okay.
No, I just wanted to add, yeah, it is really interesting to try to explain this to someone who doesn't know this information, especially like an older generation, like
Yeah.
because my toddler, he spends a lot of time with my parents and they're great and they're super loving, but they're distracted. So when he comes with me, obviously he has a bit of a meltdown and my parents will always say, I don't understand. He never acts like that in front of us. And I don't know how to explain it other than just say, like, I'm his safe space. Like, he's been trying to be good for you all day. I know he's a good boy, but it's tough. I
Yeah,
wish
it
they
is.
I wish they would do the work and learn it because, I don't want to explain it to them. I don't want to hurt their feelings.
No, that's right. Yeah, it is a really tough thing because we have multiple generations of people with different lived experiences and different beliefs, right? Like when I say to people, there's no research that punishment works, and there's no research that rewards work. People are like, impossible. I must have read that something. Like, no, you didn't. Like, it doesn't work. Like, it's really hard to try to get people to understand, like, that parenting styles change and adjust based on science and research, and that there's volumes of research being done every day. Universities are full of it, but people are just like, yeah, I'm just going to parent the way that I parented, and that's what I expect my kids to parent their kids too. So um it is a very interesting thing when you see the dynamics of three different generations and their emotional awareness and their emotional ability and the language that they use. It's really interesting. Yeah, certainly, for sure. You're not the only person living in those situations where behavior is different in one place than it is in the other. That's a really that's a really common thing. Holly, so what you're saying is it's okay to see mom and dad, yes, mom or dad cry or feel down instead of hiding it from them. Yes. And in a true, authentic, emotionally rich space, I suggest to people um, we normalize all emotions. Now, 2 week depressive episodes in the bed, not able to get out and not eating and not able to like mobilize and take your kids where they need to go. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is, uh, I got a really upsetting telephone call, so I'm feeling really sad today. I I'm doing an internal dialogue in my house all the time, and not just the challenging emotions, also the happy ones. We were driving to school the other day, and I looked at my kiddo and I said, "You know what? God, like right now I have this feeling of like lightness. Like I don't have anything that I'm really worried about. I'm so happy that, you and I get to do this every day. I just want you to know that this just came over me. I'm having this feeling of like gratitude and love and appreciation. And I truly was authentically having this feeling. And so I shared that with her. That's an emotionally rich situation. The same way as if, I'm having a bad day. We're all allowed to have bad days. And we can't hide it from them anyway. They know. I mean, when I was having a really hard time, my kid would walk up to me all the time and say, "Are you okay?" Like You know, you walk up to people and you're like, "Are you okay?" Because we know when other people are not okay. So if we're like Meryl Streep Academy Award winning acting about our stressors and how we are doing, and we think we're hiding it from people, we're not. That's that interbrain connection. That's how humans work. Like if you ever walked into like a staff room or an elevator or whatever, and you kind of go, geez, what happened here? Or what's that? What's going on here? Like that's how humans know about safety. That's how we stayed safe before we could actually have the structures in our mouth and our jaws to be able to make words and talk and say, saber-toothed tiger on the horizon. There was a time when we didn't have that ability. So we have this deep, innate human conditioning of being able to look around the room and figure out if this is safe. And if it's not, we get behaviors, or we get acting, or we get like, I'm going to be really good until this is over. So we can't hide, we don't hide our stressors anyway. So you can't hide it from them. Now,
Oh,
does that
sure.
mean you need to like say all the gory details about the reason why you're sad and say something that's developmentally inappropriate? And
Yeah,
that's not what I'm talking about either. Like we do it in a way that is like, oh, I'm allowed to have a sad day. I'm just kind of sad today. I wonder what can I do to make it so that I feel better. I'm always acting, right? It's just like, I think I'm gonna go take a walk. Maybe that might make like my internal dialogue is outside, so I'm teaching this stuff all the time. Yeah,
yeah.
Holly, did you have something to
There,
say?
there's no hiding it in this house. As you know, PTSD, all the tisms.
All the tisms, yeah. It's really hard to you can't hide it anyway. So I always say to people, it's way better to say today's feels like a hard day, or today feels like a sticky day, or you know what, I gotta do this thing tomorrow. Oh, I'm so nervous. Or, that kind of stuff is feels like harder in the moment, but actually in the long run is creating this space around emotions and this emotional awareness in our kids that nobody did for us, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's really tough. Now, again, it's not like they don't have to know every gory detail, they don't have to know everything, but and we don't want them to parent us, like we don't want, but you'll see sometimes, like they'll reach out and say, "Oh, can I give you a hug?" These really nice socially connected things that are beautiful, right? Um, yeah. And I will say this too, just this whole kind of social stuff. I volunteer at every Thursday night at a neurodiverse choir here in the city. And if anybody out there still has the belief that neurodiverse kids don't have any empathy and they don't have any social triggers and that they don't care about social stuff, you just rewrite that story because none of that is true. Like the most compassionate, empathy-filled people who have like social justice ideas are the neurodivergent folks in your world. No question about it. So put that out there for people. The social stuff is all about safety, 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 safety. And for neurodivergent people, and I'm just always going to go back to that, is how all the sensory stuff, and especially little kids too. Back to Amy's toddler. Um, how we figure out the world and the world around us and what's happening in our world when we're little is through senses. That's our main ability to be able to take in information, make sense of it, and then spit it back out to people. So there's always some element of sensory stuff that is connected to the social stuff that is connected to the safety, that is then connected to the biological domain. Because if you're in school all day long where it's loud and stinky, you can't be social. There's a really good case study in this book about this kid named Tyler who was really dysregulated at school, impulsive, all that kind of stuff. And when they made this place emotionally safe for him, he was able to be social, appropriately social, whatever that means. Um, so when everything is heightened, and there's too many transitions, it's too loud, too brink, stinky, too tight. I haven't slept. Uh, I'm hungry. All those sensory stuff, all that stuff sort of bubbles up into a situation that is really hard for people to be social and pay attention. Very stressful. Um, so that's a lot of talk about the emotional stuff. We could be here forever talking about this, the social domain. It can be really stressful. But I do think that the pro-social domain, which is when I was doing all of my training, pro-social means a lot of different things to different people. Um, it has a lot to do with empathy, but it's more than that kid doesn't have any empathy because babies are born with access to empathy. We just have to cultivate it. We have to make it bigger. You've got to be even the most horrific people on the planet who've done the most horrible things were once babies who were born with the natural instinct to have empathy for other people. Something happened along the way. Nothing's really super messed up. But deep down, when we are first born and it's a clean slate, we have empathy available to us. We just have to cultivate it. And that almost always happens in a deep relationship with another grown up, with a person who is my safe person. So it's also about co-regulation. Like any of us who've raised kids or with kids can think about um, the times that we have tried to regulate with them and how hard that was. That's how we kicked tonight off, right? Talking about how hard that is to do. So um, I think that one of the biggest things for us to walk away from here is, like I said in the beginning, how deeply connected we all are. And that's the pro-social domain. The other part about the pro-social domain, and you might find this to be relevant with the kids in your house or kids that you're working with. Um, some people have a really, really stress-filled pro-social domain where I don't know. Has anybody just not been able to turn off CNN in the last 3 or 4 days? Like that's me. I'm totally addicted. I can't stop watching what's happening in Minneapolis. Because my pro-social domain of my social injustice of like, how do we stop all this hurting, right? How do we make the hurting go away? Because we don't want to see other people suffer. And that's the pro-social domain. So sometimes these are the kids that are always going around saying, that's not fair. That's how come that person gets this and I don't have that. That's the stressor in the pro-social domain where they're always looking for equalness and that people are okay and that people are not stressed or tired or when somebody yells at another person, you might be scared that that person is yelling, but you're actually really also feeling like, oh my gosh, that person is must be so sad or that person must be so hurt. When my kid was having a really hard time in school, it was because the teacher was yelling all the time and never yelling at her, yelling at other people. And her pro-social domain got very stressed to the point of where she couldn't go back to school. So that's part of being human too, is that we don't want to see other people suffering. So that's the pro-social domain, effectively. If you hear people going, uh, if you hear people saying like, that's not fair, that's a pro-social stressor. It's another thing. And if they're in places where they're seeing that a lot, that could be it. And so this is the question all the time. Oh, just a second, Holly's right. So I'm part of the grade 2 program here in Fogo, Roots of Empathy. Yeah. Um, someone from the island brings their infant into the school for 1 hour a week and the kid and interacts with the kids. Pretty amazing. Yeah. Yeah. I love kids. They're amazing. In reality, what we say to people sometimes too, if it doesn't look like there's empathy, that means their stress is really high. If we get kids who are like, I don't care what he says, I don't care about that situation, that's usually a really big signal of stress. And here's another really interesting thing about empathy. Every emotion has price tag, an energy price tag. Like sadness is expensive. It's an expensive emotion because it drains our energy. Happiness gives us puts us in the green, right? Happiness is can kind of cultivate more energy. Like you think about how good you feel after you see something really funny, like TikTok videos of animals talking with voices behind them. Nothing makes me laugh harder. So that kind of gives me some, puts some gas in my tank. But empathy is really expensive. It's an expensive emotion. So if we are watching CNN 24/7 about what's happening in Minneapolis, it makes us tired because our empathy is so high for people who are suffering. So yeah, so that's one of the questions in the discussion guide. So how do we move from me to we in the co-regulation story of how do we help somebody stay calm? And that's empathy, soft eyes, understanding what the stressors are, knowing that kids are little, knowing that adolescents' brains are not cooked, all of that sort of how do we join together? How is it us together? Helping people who are distressed. So that's all the domains, and they're all, like I said, linked together. And that's a beautiful thing. So, anybody want to talk about adolescence? We uh, we got some really good questions today about adolescence. So, here's the thing about adolescence. Almost, if we were to be able to rewind the clock and go back to a time when humans were just standing up, running around out in the Serengeti in Africa, that's where we all came from event at one point. Like if we were back to the early humans and somebody had to make the decision to go populate a different place and then to go populate a different place. The theory is that that was all adolescents who were doing that because their bodies needed to move. They walked and they walked and they walked and they walked. And they all at one point went, this is stupid. I'm leaving. We got to go do our own thing. And that's essentially without the adolescent brain. There's a theory that humans wouldn't have evolved into the species that we are. We wouldn't have been able to, learn the new things, learn about new climates, walk to new places, start new cultures, all of that kind of stuff. So the power, I love the title in this chapter because it's called The Power and the Pearls of Adolescence, because it's not all beautiful rainbows and unicorns, but there is not a time in since when you're a little baby, your brain is growing and growing and growing and growing and growing, and then it sort of levels off. Stuff is still changing and growing in neuroplasticity and the prefrontal cortex. This part right here in your brain is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and more connected. But just as things start to like cement in there and get connected, then this rapid fire development starts happening. So anybody here who has plants in their house or is a gardener would know that if you have a plant that's growing and growing and growing, it grows all spindly and long towards the light. If you prune it back, your plant will start doing this and get fuller and thicker. So that's what neurons and adolescent brains do. They're growing and growing and growing, and then this natural pruning back happens so that they'll grow thicker and stronger, and your plant is better. And that's what's happening in adolescence. Really great book called Brainstorm by Dan Siegel, trying to explain, the beautiful things that are happening in the adolescent period and the medical miracle that's going on around hormones, growth, bone growth, density, brain development, synapses, pruning, all of that kind of stuff is happening, and that we have this sort of dialogue around North America. Oh, all adolescents are pains in the ass and they're, no good for nothing and they're causing all these problems and all that kind of stuff. But it's a really cool time too. It's a really, if you got some cool adolescents in your life, you can actually learn some really cool things about, you know, they can do more than just program your phone for you, because that's what happens in my world. But they're also tired because they should be sleeping when they're in school, for starters. And they're growing and they need more rest. And now in our culture, we've added this dynamic of the phones and the screens and the social media. If anybody wants to know more about social media, screens, and all those kinds of things for kids, I should add that to the list to send out because that's another really big stressor for sure. Um, Carmen, I know you sent me a question, and I'm trying to remember the exact wording of your question around the adolescents.
Well,
If you feel comfortable saying it.
I have two wonderful adolescents, two wonderful examples. They're good kids. I have great confidence that they're going to do wonderful things. Um, they give me a hard time, but that's because I'm their mom. I've accepted it.
Mm,
But every time I see them out and I'm not kind of in their realm, they're actually pretty well regulated.
yeah,
But yeah. So the thing is, like, both of them are, well, I say that they're addicted to their phones. Every time I see them, they've got a phone in their head, right? Like, in their face.
yeah,
And I can't be nagging about it all the time. I try to,
yeah.
talk to them and say things. So my thing was like, okay, I do have one little guy who does get really upset. Uh,
Okay, coming back to me now.
yeah, the other day, I was saying, like when you do get upset, you can just do some breathing, and that helps me. And if you want, I can help you go through it. And he's like, I'm not upset right now. I'm like, actually, yes, you are. Here
Yeah,
we are
yeah,
again.
yeah, yeah,
Um, the other one has ADHD. He's got a diagnosis, but he doesn't think he does. He hasn't quite figured it out, right?
hmm
And so I'll say things like, "Oh, here it says that for your time blindness or whatever you call it, you can put some visuals around or whatever. What do you think of that?" And he's like, "Mom, I don't need that. I'm fine the way I am. I just, just stop." Like,
yeah,
okay, all right, no problem. So there's two examples, tangible examples of
yeah,
conversations I've had in the last week with my kids. And I'm like,
right.
I'm trying to. So my question was, do they think I'm an idiot because I'm their mother? And
Mm.
they're just like, oh, we're so over her, we're ready to go populate other parts of the world. Or
India.
is there some sort of real trust that I need to go back um, to,
Hmm
to help them say, oh, I am here as with, you know, your best interest at top of mind. And I'm not trying to nag you about your phone use, but you're on it too much. And,
Yeah.
you're not eating properly. And these are all things that I have to let go.
Well, it's really an interesting conversation. I'll just preface it with this. This is my caveat of lots of these conversations. Um, this is the wisdom that my sister said to me once. We live in a situation where we think if I say something and give the information, the direction or the correction, because that's direction and correction, right? I want to give you some direction and some correction from my lived experience because I love you so much, right? I want to give you this information. We think if they don't change it or do what I'm asking them to do right now, that they're not hearing me or it's not having any impact because we want to see the change right away,
Right. I hear that. Yeah.
right? Like that's what we want. But know that every time, even though their behavior is stop, I don't want to hear this, or all of that kind of stuff, the opposition to what you're saying is really adolescence. Like that is adolescence, right? Like it is this, I'm my own person. I want to make my own choices. I want to do all this kind of stuff. That is adolescence. Now, did we totally 100% absolutely screw up around the screens in our culture? No question about that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, no question. It is the parenting question of our time.
Yeah.
We've totally messed up around that. So that's another whole conversation. We could put a pin in that. But this whole kind of like rolling your eyes at your parents and all of that kind of stuff, and um, opposition about what we say, what we are saying, that is adolescence. They're going to figure it out. They're, hopefully safely, they're going to figure it out, right? So what Dan Siegel talks about, and but don't dismiss the value of your seed planting along the way.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Like just because you're not seeing that thing right away, that doesn't mean that there isn't any value in what you're saying, or that you still shouldn't keep saying it in a way that's kind and loving and compassionate. And this is how I feel about this thing, and all of that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Um, don't, in the next little while, the Canadian government's going to have a law about social media for kids under 15. Like, we're going to try to correct this problem. Are we too late and too out of the gate to try to talk about it? This generation of your kids who are a little bit older, maybe our younger kids will be able to figure it out. But the addiction to the phone is a real, real, real thing.
Oh,
Um,
my kids will have to work that out as adults. Like,
yeah, it's a thing, right? I mean, and it's difficult for me to talk about because I know 100% certain that, if my phone use was accurately tracked during the run of a day, it'd be scary too, right? So, it's really one of those things that we just totally messed up. We might as well just started giving people bags of cocaine when they're 5, right? Like, it's just such a mistake. Anyway, we're going to try to fix it. It's this whole thing. But they are doing this adolescent stuff. So I'll just talk about Dan Siegel. So there's this really fantastic book called The Power of Showing Up for your kids. This is
yeah.
absolutely, absolutely beautiful book. It might be the next book that we do in book club. But
Hmm.
so he really does explain this brain biochemistry and how deeply connected we all are, and how your kids still need us for a long time. You need to know every time you're talking to them and you're getting this stuff back from them. Uh, the opposition is a communication of some kind of stress. It is always a communication of stress. So you need to park that in your brain and know this is because when he
Yeah.
says like there's nothing wrong or I'm not upset, that's not true. You know it's true. You can hear it in their voice. Everything about them is saying that they're upset, that they are upset. But the
Yeah.
opposition is communicating stress. So in those situations, we try to turn off the direction and the correction as much as we can and think about the connection instead. Like,
Hmm.
can we have a conversation about anything but the thing that's driving me crazy, and really ramp up our connection and lower our direction and our correction? And in the time of adolescence, that's really like if we were to think about how much correcting and directing we do, whatever that level is, because we still have to do that. We still have to say, it's Friday night, you're going to be in a car. If anybody's drinking, call me. Here's our code word. Like, you're doing all that safety stuff, right? So, you're still got to do some correcting and directing, but we really want to ramp up our connection time, like really ramp it up. And then we start to see a whole lot of stuff that happens in these situations where we stop feeling like we're nagged, but our words are landing in a better way. So
Yeah.
that whole ratio of directing and correcting, which we have to do as parents and as educators, we have to do correcting and directing. But what is our connection? So we call it your CDC count, right? You're correcting, directing, and connecting. What's your C? If your C is really high, you often see the opposition start to go away. And that's really hard with adolescents too, because they don't want to be doing what we're doing. They don't want to watch the same stuff we're watching, all of that kind of stuff. It's kind of hard, but we have to get really creative in our adolescent periods around our connection time and what's available and how do we do that for them, because the Dan Siegel stuff that he explains really well in his book is our jobs is we're a launching pad. So our kids are here and we bring them to school in the morning and we launch them out. Then
Mm.
at the end of the day, come back. And in this launching pad is where we see their dysregulation. We're helping them manage their stuff and their time management and their blah, 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 blah. And then we launch them out. And then we launched them out into the world, right? We launched them out into birthday parties, and we launched them out into overnight sleepovers. And then we launched them out into, parties on Friday and Saturday night. And then we launched them out into the relationships. And they're always coming back, right? That's what we
Yeah.
want to do. It's like, what are we cultivating in this space here so that they feel like if they're out here and they're swirling, that they know that our place is a soft place to land. I got you. I see you. I know that this is happening and you can stay here for what you need. And then we launch you back out again. And in this returning and volleying out and softening and volleying out and helping and all of that kind of stuff is where we are hopefully launching people out into the world where they can stand on their own 2 feet and make good decisions. But we're always coming back, right? And that's the reason why, the grief of our parents passing is so hard from us because we've lost our foundation. Or when that happens, like, what do I do now, right? So know that all of that grief that happens in adolescence when we're launching them out, and there's all of this sort of, I don't know, sticky stuff that's going on in the middle, it's really normal and it's sometimes really hard. And it's really like, um, trying to let them figure out and not micromanage it and not letting them have their own lived experiences is really hard, especially if there's a disability or a diagnosis and, stuff that you know about. Like I'm going around all the time going like, I'm just flapping my gums. No one's paying any attention to me. Like this is what I know about. And it's really hard. Super, super, super hard. I don't know if that
Yeah.
helped.
I've learned not to take it personally.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's another really good part.
but you could say that and say, well, of course you're not going to take it personally, but sometimes it's really hard because they're
Mm,
not little kids anymore, right? Like,
yeah, yeah.
they almost look like they should know what they're saying, and that,
Yeah,
they might hurt your feelings, but I can just tell them like, oh, thanks for hurting my feelings. Okay.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, you can still do a lot of teaching that way too, right? Like it's still like it never ends, right? Like the questions that come to me through FaceTime from Montreal every day, I'm just like, what? Like what? So, it's really the whole adolescent thing is so, so, so very hard.
Yeah.
Um, even all of it is really hard because they're in a world that we just don't even understand. And since, I've been doing this work for what, over 10 years now, and we first started teaching this stuff to people, we were like, oh yeah, prefrontal cortex fully cooked at 25, 23 in women, 25 in men. And now we know that that's not even right. It's older. It's more like 28.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's old. The human brain takes a long time to get cooked up, right? So, yeah, it's a risk-taking culture, those adolescents. And like you gotta, it's like it's holding but not too tightly.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
the
Thanks.
phone thing is a big deal, right? Like the phones and the screens is a really, really big deal. And not everybody can do it because for some of us it's a super stressor.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have a question there? I know I just blew a lot of information at you. Kind of pulled in some different authors there too. Um, the last two chapters here. Yeah, I struggle with the phones and the screens, and it's an escape from my son. His OCD. Yeah, it's so from one person who lives with another person. I'm got a kiddo with OCD too, and and I also spent a lot of time with another adolescent with autism and OCD and ADHD. And his relationship with technology is different than my kiddo's relationship with technology. So, like, I can say to her, like, is it we're gotta go put your phone down, or we gotta go put your whatever down. She has really good ideas about her phone. She doesn't have it on. She's not in her bed with her when she goes to sleep at night. She charges it up in another room. She doesn't have her iPad on. It's like she's got really great iPad technology. Kind of, she doesn't have the same addiction. And the stuff that she watches is not violent. It's not overstimulating. She's watching, Broadway singers, 19 50 singing whatever. Like it's not dysregulating stuff. The stuff that some kids are watching though is dysregulating. Some of the video games are dysregulating. It's a lot of stuff. So it can be really super dysregulating from a super stimulant perspective where, I've worked with families where every second day they would come home from work and the doors are off their hinges because kids would get so angry because they lost a video game from their playing with their bud down the street, right? That's a problem. What I was experiencing in my house was a very different kind of a thing. And then also kids who like, they can't stay in a social situation because they're in such a rush to get back to play Grand Theft Auto or whatever. Those kinds of addictive things that come out of it. So sometimes because we still don't know what we're doing around the screen stuff, the idea in situations like that is just get rid of it. Just don't have it anymore. Now you and I and anybody who's living with a kid who's not doing very well at school or is struggling socially, um, saying that you can't have your iPad or disconnecting from your friends who are on your iPad it's not going to work. It's going to make your life worse, right? It's going to make their lives worse. It's going to make your life worse. So sometimes professionals give us advice like, well, just get rid of it. But if you're an adolescent and you struggle socially and you have social connections online with people who you are your friends, is it the same as us sitting down together and hanging out at the mall or playing a board game or whatever? We don't have that social one-on-one connection. But if it is their only social connection, and there's neurodiversity and there's developmental trauma and stuff like that, then my thoughts are about it is that we still don't know what we're saying in those situations to say, oh, you just can't have your iPad, or you're too much on your iPad, or you shouldn't be playing those games, because the brain is so social, it will get it any way that it can. It is this connection to this thing that is he's still connecting with other people. It's really easy for us to go, oh, it's horrible. I wish he wasn't doing it. But he would, at least it's some social connection. That's how I look at it. And I think most people who are doing neuro-affirming care will also say the same thing because the neurodivergent community is pretty clear. Like without these social connections online, I would be alone. I wouldn't have anybody. So again, we're flying the plane as we're building it. We really don't know what we've done in those situations, but there are a lot of neurodiverse adolescents will say like this is my people. And I have neurodivergent people in my life who met their partner online. They're married now. They have kids. Like they met each other playing video games and talking about Dungeons and Dragons in the safety of online, and now they have a life together, right? So that's and I got more than one person that happened to. So it's a lot. It's an awful lot for sure. And like I said, we're just figuring out as we go. So, I am going to write a note to myself that I'm also going to share the screen stuff because I think there's lots of really great stuff that's happening around that. I'm going to write a link here to screens stuff. Um, we've got a couple of really great resources around screens and things because we're just figuring it out. Every kid is different. I know people in houses got one kid who can use as much screen time as they want, and the other kid just cannot do it. It's just, and parents are managing it because if the other person had access to social media and an iPad, they wouldn't go to school because their addiction around it is just too big. So yeah, we help people with that kind of stuff too. So the very last chapter is parents under pressure. And I think the big takeaway in this chapter is, it's parents under pressure. Where do we go from here? Like one of the biggest things that he talks about in this chapter, which I think is useful for people to have a look at, is the different kinds of parenting styles, whether you're an authoritarian, permissive, authoritative, or involved, which is all have their own things. It's been researched to death. This book doesn't go into attachment styles necessarily, but it does talk about the parenting styles, and the attachment stuff is also really big and really important. Um, so I think if this chapter I kind of wrapped it up in one word, it would be about keeping your eyes soft, um, trying to do as much reframing as you can do, and to keep our empathy really high. I think I said this last time. The very first question that we ask people to think about in the certification process is like, if you could write 10 things about your childhood that's different than the 10 things about your kid's childhood that's different from yours, there would be a lot of things there, right? Like, and so we got to know that this generation of kids are dealing with a whole bunch of different stressors than what we were dealing with. So I think that those are the big ones about like really trying to know that this is complex and know that this is tough work, but also, if we can keep reframing behavior, then we keep our connections with others really high. Make sure that at the end of the day, the thing that matters the most out of this is not our kids' compliance to our rules and our demands. It's that we have a connected relationship and that we don't damage that relationship and that human need for connection and stuff like that. So that's the last chapter. Um, this is, again, I guess if I wanted to sing the songs of a book, this is a good book. If anybody has, only got like 10 minutes here together as we end together. If anybody has any suggestions for the next book, we're going to take a little bit of time off and and kind of think about what the next book is and kind of pull it together. Maybe another book that I got to reread before we offer. But if anybody feels like they want to make a suggestion for the next book, please do. And any kind of questions for anything before anybody kind of takes off, if anyone feels like they need to scoot, they can, or I can hang around and we can answer some more questions. There's a lot of information. Like I said, you can read it a bunch of times. I guess that one of the last things that I will say is that kind of circling back to the beginning of this conversation about the biological domain. And this is kind of difficult in this sort of season that we're all living in globally, where it's really kind of stressful. But um, if we want to have this experience of feeling really well ourselves so that we can, take better care of ourselves because our kids are swimming in our stress. If we're stressed too, our kids are swimming in that. We need to know that that's a reality. Um, Myself and Lori are doing a 6 week, I'll say online workshop where it is for it's a grown up, it's not a family thing, it's for grown ups. Where we're going to do really focus on the biological domain for parents, where we're going to do 6 weeks of information around food and mood and nutrition, and do some like teaching around the food stuff, and then finishing it with some breath work, body work, tapping, this kind of stuff where we do all this beautiful crossing of the body midline and regulation, kind of yoga movement and stuff like that. So, yeah, if anybody wants to know any information about that, and you can use your health insurance if you want to participate and come live or watch the recordings, whatever you feel like you want to. But in keeping, oh yes, Meredith, that's fine. Yeah, I'll make sure that you get a certificate. I think I got it in my list anyway. Um, certificate. Yeah, if anybody wants any more information about that upcoming workshop or anything else that we're doing, and just drop us a line. And we're all over social media because they were all over social media. That's not true. We're mostly on Facebook. We do some things on Instagram. I'm too old to figure out TikTok. It's not going to happen. But anyway, you can follow what we're doing or get on our news list and newsletter list. Um, yeah, thanks, Holly. Yes, I'm sure it is bedtime. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I feel like I've learned a lot, and ironically, I almost didn't make it today because my it was a snow day and we're all sick, and my son
Yeah.
watched entirely way too much TV and had an epic nuclear meltdown at supper time. But I found myself handling that differently today than I have been. I felt like over Christmas before I found out about all this, I was kind of looking into myself, but I felt like I wasn't being strict enough and I didn't have enough rules, and I needed to come down harder on my toddler. And in fact, I learned I have to do the complete opposite. So thank you
Yeah.
so much. It's been so helpful.
Oh, good. I'm really, really glad to hear that. That's a beautiful thing. That's a great, that's great, great news. Yeah, we do think, and everybody tells us you gotta be harder. There's no science to back that up.
I
So
love that.
yeah, I was like, yeah, there's no science to back that up. So yeah, go with your instinct. Like, what's your instinct? That's the thing, right? Like parents, your instinct sometimes is like, it's like this doesn't feel right. If it doesn't feel right, it's not right.
Yeah. And today I felt like, this isn't his fault. Like, we're not well. He's watched too much TV. We didn't do a lot with him. I was working, so I was distracted, and I just felt really sorry for him, not, for the first time ever, and not frustrated. So just, I have a lot more empathy all of a sudden for him. But, I got to try not to be so hard on myself, but I just see things differently now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a game. It's different every day. And you could like if I believed in gold stars, I'd give you a gold star. That's a beautiful thing. Like just to do something different, try it on for size and see what it feels like. And know, there's and every time we go in a connected way, it gets easier and easier. As opposed to, like my sister Lori says that when you get to do this stuff and you learn it and you start living it, you go from there's that person doing that thing to oh, there's that person doing that thing. Like everything changed,
Wow, so true.
right? Like you're just like, oh, here it is again. I know what to do. Like there it is. And and that you can use that with anybody. Like it's somebody you work with, or it could be a family member, or it's your kids, it's whoever. It's just like you really do go from to it's just really
It,
what happens.
it literally feels like the thought diffusion that I'm working on with my OCD in therapy.
Yeah.
Similar.
Yeah, it is like just soften. We're North Americans are hard, right? We get hard energy around everything. If we soften around things, we can, we look at it differently and see it differently and hold it differently and get curious and all that stuff, right? Beautiful. Love it, Amy. That's so fantastic. We got about 5 more minutes left. If anybody else, again, if you got a scoot, scoot. If you feel like you want to make a question or a comment, then have a question or comment. I'm hoping that I'm going to look out the window and that the snow has stopped. That's what that's my distraction right now. I'm going to stop recording, and then maybe if anybody feels like they want to, okay, I'm going to stop it. I can hear the snowblowers too.